Hi guys, it's Alex from PMTV UK and PMT Newcastle, and today I'm going to give you 10 reasons why you need Push 2 if you're an Ableton user. For those that aren't aware, Push is the official flagship controller for Live from Ableton, and because it comes from Berlin directly, it offers seamless hardware-software integration and very deep control of all of Live's unique features. It's a large unit. It's quite a bit bigger than the Novation Launchpad Pro, which is probably the next best third-party controller for Live. And it's quite heavy too, but in a good way. It feels really solid, and the top shell is anodized aluminium. Nice. More importantly than that though, it's many things in one. It's an instrument, a mixer, a launchpad for your clips, a drum machine, a step sequencer, and a sampler. It's equally at home in the studio and on stage, so let's have a closer look. Push 2 requires Live 9.5 and above to work, so make sure you update your software if needs be. It plugs in via USB, as you would expect, and has its own power supply, because all those lights won't illuminate on their own. Right in the middle we have an 8x8 grid of RGB lit pads, which is very much multi-purpose. It's not only for triggering clips in the session view, but also for playing drums and intuitively playing harmonies and melodies as well. We can trigger clips in the session view. We can play drums if we have a drum rack selected and go over to note mode. We can play the drums either in real time, or we can use the step sequencer, which appears above. And if we want access to all the pads, if we've got quite an extensive drum rack, we just hit layout and we get access to all 64. And you can play melodies and harmonies quite intuitively by selecting an appropriate instrument and going to note mode and then using the scale function. So if we press the scale button, we can see we've got a lot of different scales to choose from, and we can either set out the grid in key or in chromatic mode. So in chromatic, every note on the keyboard is presented to us, and the ones that are in key with the scale that we've selected are lit up. If we go to in key, we can guarantee that we're never going to play anything out of key, because only the notes that are in that scale will be given. So the pads obviously also capture velocity information with every note that we play, although we can bypass this at any time by pressing the accent button, in which case every note that we play will be at full velocity. And it's probably also a good opportunity now to show you the touch strip at the side of the grid, which is currently being used to control pitch bend. So the screen on Push 1 was great, but the screen on Push 2 is fantastic. Not only is it higher resolution and full colour, but it contextually shows us instrument and effect parameters. So browsing is easy and it's really clear to see everything that you've got in your library. It's nice and clear when it comes to changing parameters of devices, and perhaps best of all is when we look at sampling. Waveforms in samplers are displayed super accurately, and it's just really easy and clear to go through and alter different parts of your sample without having to refer back to the software. And within this lovely high resolution display, Push 2 now finally supports the loading and browsing of third-party plugins. Amazing. Use something like Complete 10 to do all your composition? No problem. Put down that mouse. Use your Push instead. It sounds trivial, but it's really handy having basic functions at your fingertips as well. Undo, mute and solo, metronome, master tempo. All of these things are functions that require you to look back at your computer screen, but now you can just use them directly from the hardware itself. Less time being uninspired, more time making music. Live's most unique feature is of course the session view, and Push allows us to get the most out of the overdub feature. This is where we have a clip that already has some notes in it, but we want to overdub some more notes over the top, non-destructively. And we access this all through the record button. So I've been using Live since about version 7, and one obstacle that I've kept running into is recording something like drums where I'm using 2 hands to record something in and not being able to hit the record button quick enough to stop that MIDI clip exactly on 2 bars or 4 bars or whatever it is. So instead of having a 2-bar loop, I've got a 2.1 bar loop. So I've got to stop playback, go into the software and manually change it to 2 bars, and it just takes extra time and it's not very inspiring. But luckily now with Push 2, we have a button called Fix Length, and what that's going to do is make every new clip that we create an exact length that we specify. Perfect. So if we press and hold the Fix Length button, we can see the options of how long we want new clips to be. So we'll leave it on 2 bars. So now when I hit record, I can play the drums and not have to worry about pressing record at exactly the right time, because we're going to get a 2-bar loop, and that is a fact. Okay, so we're not all accomplished drummers, and even then, not many of us can play in perfect 16th notes or triplet notes onto these tiny little pads. But thankfully, turns out Push 2 is an excellent drummer and is more than happy to do this for us. All we need to do is press the repeat button and select a time interval, so 16th notes for example, and now when we press and hold the pad, we'll get a continuous, rhythmically perfect stream of notes. This is also velocity sensitive as well, so the harder we push down on the pad, the louder in volume it'll be. So earlier we mentioned the RGB screen and how good it is for sampling. Let's have another look at that again now. One of the most powerful samplers within Ableton Live is called Simpler, and you can see when we load up a simpler instrument with a sample already loaded in there, we get this really nice view. Look at that waveform, lovely stuff. We can zoom in really easily, and we can trim the start and end point of our sample. So again, no more looking back over to the computer screen, we can just delve right in and do it all from the hardware. And because Simpler is awesome, it's going to automatically do a lot of the hard work for us. So short samples will be treated as one-shots, so drum hits and stuff, and long samples will be automatically warped by default. If you haven't looked into the warp feature of Ableton Live in general, I would highly recommend doing so. It's basically a very clever algorithm that will time stretch or reduce whatever audio you're putting into it to get it to fit perfectly in time with your project. So you could import a drum loop or something that's at a completely different tempo than what you're using in your project, and then Warp will quantize it in time. Did someone say remix? So there are 3 fundamental modes to Simpler. Classic is loaded by default, and it will allow you to polyphonically play your samples. And because I've already gone into the Simpler and changed a few settings around, which I'll show you here, we just press on Simpler again and we get a few more options available to us. I've gone to Warp, changed the Warp mode to Pro and turned the formants up. So now when we play different pitches that are different from the original pitch of the sample, it's not going to sound like a chipmunk basically, it's going to sound a little bit more natural. You can hear the difference if I start to change the formants back down to 0. So it's a good idea to experiment with the different warp modes to see what kind of cool sounds you can come up with. The best thing about this warp mode is that you can play chords out of vocals essentially, and again not have them sound all weird and mangled. Next along from Classic is One Shot, and this is just how you'd expect. It's perfect for drum sounds and stuff. It'll be monophonic by default. And it'll play the whole sample. And the final mode is Slicing, and this one's a cool one. It'll go through and detect the transients in your audio and then split up your sample into different slices, which you can then play across the grid. So if we extend this sample out, we can see that it's detecting transients and starting to split them up. So if we carry on and do this quite a lot, we can obviously have up to 64 on one page of short slices. Where it starts to get really powerful is with the convert button. Because once you've sliced up your audio like this, you might want certain parts to be pitched up or down, or you might want to add effects to them and so on. So all we need to do now is press convert, and that's going to convert this simpler into a drum rack. And we all know how powerful drum racks are. So once the software's done its thing, now we've got a fully playable drum rack. Moving on, Push isn't just meant for the composition and live performance stages, it's also built for mixing. With a touch of the mix button, we get an overview of all the tracks in our project and the volumes of each one with a really accurate display showing peak and RMS levels, very very handy. And with another press of the mix button, we focus specifically on whatever track we have selected, so then we can go through and change the panning or the sends of each one as well. You can also mix group tracks or tracks that contain a drum rack or an instrument rack, if that makes sense. It's not as difficult as it sounds. So you'll see a specific icon if you've got a group or a drum rack or something like that loaded. So you press it once, press it again, and then it'll unfold so you can see all the different parts in there, which you can then go through and mix as you would normally. So there's no limitations here. And finally, maybe one of the lesser known facts about Push 2 are the two foot switch inputs on the back. The first one is for a sustain pedal, and the second one can be used with an unlatched pedal to arm recording. And there are your 10 reasons why you need a Push 2 if you're an Ableton user. Are there any features that I missed out that you absolutely love about Push 2? Write them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to PMTV UK for lots more product demos and tutorials. I'll see you next time.